Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of HearthCenter. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have some fantastic guests in light of some really crazy Hearthstone news and Hearthstone happening. So, without further ado, let me introduce our first guest, Max from T-Method. Hello, Max.
Hi there.
Hi. Thank you so much for being on the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, man, I feel like it's been a pretty big last couple weeks for Hearthstone. You know, there's been a bunch of drama, big tournaments, all sorts of cool stuff, and you've kind of been smack in the middle of it in a way, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So, we can get on to ESL and all that later in the broadcast. But why don't you just introduce us to our viewers? You introduce yourself to our viewers, and how you got started, why you play Hearthstone, the whole thing.
Right, so fundamentally, I play Hearthstone because I enjoy competition. I've always enjoyed competition. Like, I played Magic for about 6 years before I started playing Hearthstone. I've always enjoyed card games. And when Hearthstone sort of came out, I saw it on Twitch. I was like, this looks like a fun game. I'll give it a shot. I did pretty well on the ladder the first time. I tried pretty hard. I finished 34th, like the first season I made Legend.
Wow.
Then the next season I finished third. That qualified me for like the last chance qualifier for the EU BlizzCon. I won that. I went to EU BlizzCon, and that was the first time, I guess, I was like out there in the Hearthstone public eye.
Yeah.
Then there's DreamHack Bucharest, and now ESL, and now I'm here.
Yeah. And so I guess you've always been drawn to competition, but is this, I guess, your first esport? Is this the first time you've played a game and really gotten yourself out there?
Well, I've played StarCraft and I've played League, but I suck really badly at both of those games. I just don't have like the mechanical skill. But Hearthstone to me, it's more like a card game than an esport. I guess it's both.
Yeah.
But the card game part appeals to me the most.
Of course.
And the fact that it's an esport is really, really great. It just means there's that high level of competition that isn't there with like a lot of other card games. Magic is a thing, but that's separate from the idea of esports.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I'll put you on the long list of Hearthstone pros that come from Magic, I think that when the game first came out, I think it was those people who had already been playing card games that immediately started doing that card game style of thinking. Like, this card's good, this card's bad, this deck's good, and all of a sudden they started to like take it competitively, and now obviously they've gotten a leg up on most of the people playing Hearthstone, so here they are.
Yeah, like I actually enjoy Hearthstone like a lot more than I enjoy Magic.
Yeah.
And it's not just because I'm much better at Hearthstone than I am at Magic, but it's a lot of the mechanics. I like that Hearthstone is much more tempo based. I enjoy the fact that you can't interact on your opponent's turn. You just have to of set yourself up, and then you just take it in turns of throwing punches at each other.
Yeah.
Until one of you falls down.
No. Yeah. I'm sure everyone who watches the show gets sick of me saying this, but I also came from a Magic the Gathering background, and yeah, there was always, if anyone ever complains about RNG in Hearthstone, they seriously need to look at what it's like to lose out on a lot of money because you didn't draw lands, and it's like nothing, and you did absolutely nothing, and that would happen so often. So it's like, you're right. I think there's a lot of things that Hearthstone does right, and obviously it keeps you playing, right? It keeps you competing.
Yeah, it's just a really, really fantastic game. It's accessible to like people of like all skill levels, and people can enjoy it at all skill levels. Like, I'm enjoying it playing like with some of the best players. but I've got friends who like can't break rank 15 and they
Yeah.
have a fantastic playing the game anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm speaking of, I guess, playing with some of the top players. What do you think your strengths are as a player? I mean, are you one of the guys who creates the new decks, or do you tune the old decks, or like what? What makes you be able to be successful at Hearthstone?
well, I think I have good technical play, so I make very few like mistakes when I'm playing the game.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say I'm a strong deck builder. I don't really build my own decks. I don't. Um, I do a little bit like deck tweaking. I'll take a deck, I'll change one or two cards
Mhm.
to change it for the meta game. But I'm not the sort of guy who builds new decks from scratch.
Yeah. So,
I guess
no, yeah.
I guess I play decks that other people think have died but haven't died yet. So I was one of the first people like playing mid range hunter
Uh-huh.
after the nerf, the Undertaker nerf again, and
I
some people play Miracle
I
Rogue
think
after
you're
they nerfed Leroy.
I think we're I think our call's lagging a bit. You said you were one of the first people to play mid-range hunter.
Yeah, after they nerfed Undertaker,
Mm,
and they like the Leroy-less Miracle Rogue
mhm.
after they nerfed Leroy.
Yeah.
So
So that type of, I guess, like resurrecting the old deck or playing the deck that like people think are dead, is that more of a metagame call because you think people won't be expecting it, or do you just find alternate ways to make it work?
I think it's fundamentally just because I'm a really stubborn person and I refuse to give up on something just because Blizzard want to nerf it.
Really?
And it's also like my reasoning is Blizzard don't want to make a deck unplayable with a nerf
Mhm.
most of the time.
Yeah.
They if they're nerfing it, it's because they think something is too good, and now they're reducing it to a power level that should be on a par with the other decks.
Yeah.
So just because it was the best deck and now it's no longer the best deck doesn't mean it's no longer viable,
Okay.
which I feel a lot of people miss when they nerf cards.
I think
I
we're
think I'm losing you.
yeah.
Is your camera frozen?
No, but I think we were getting some lag, but we may be back. Welcome to Hearthstone Lag Edition. This is a very special edition. Don't worry, we'll sort that out in post if we can. But so speaking of nerfs, I guess, what do you think are some over nerfs? I mean, some cards that were nerfed so badly that even you, someone as stubborn as you, could not fix, could not play after the nerfs.
Well, so the cards that have been nerfed in my time playing Hearthstone are Eaglehorn Bow, Starving Buzzard, Leroy, Soulfire, Gadgetzan, and now Undertaker.
Mhm.
So of all those nerfs, the only card I think, maybe two cards that I think have been nerfed into unplayability are Starving Buzzard and perhaps Soulfire.
Yeah.
Like Soulfire is still because it doesn't give you that free tempo anymore.
Mm.
It's much harder to run in zoo, and there are other things competing for that slot. And Starving Man Buzzard's like a 5 mana 3/2.
Yeah. Just
So
god awful. God awful. So,
yeah.
so you were drawn to Hearthstone because of card games, and you're just naturally drawn to esports because you're a competitive person. Tell me a little bit about team um a method then. How did you get involved with them? Did they come to you? Did you come to them? How does that work?
So when I was at EU BlizzCon,
Mhm.
I met Trollden, the guy who makes the videos.
Yeah.
Um, and he said he knew who Method were looking for Hearthstone players. I knew them as like a WoW guild, and I knew that. And then he told me they're expanding into Hearthstone. They're looking for some players,
Uh-huh.
and put me in contact with the manager of Method. Um, we had a few Skype conversations, and I and two other players signed with Method, and we're still growing to this day.
Nice, nice. And just for Prosperity. Those two other players would be
That's Peony and
yes.
Cabrix.
And what are your guys' like practice sessions like?
So generally, if one of us comes up with a deck or has a tournament coming up, we'll message the other two and be like, "I want to test this deck.
Uh-huh.
Can you play Zoo against this deck for 10 games?" Then we'll
Yeah.
play Zoo against that deck for 10 games,
Mhm.
or whatever. Or we'll just be like, "Are you busy?
Yeah.
Do you want to play some games?
Yeah.
Or play a best of 5 or whatever." It's basically like whatever works at the time.
Yes.
Um, we do a lot of like laddering together as well,
Mhm.
just towards like the end of the season.
Yeah.
Um, like Cabrix is a really, really good Miracle Rogue player, and he's helped me improve my Miracle Rogue play. Um, and we share decks a lot of the time as well.
Mhm. You know, there's an interesting conversation that you can have about the concept of like laddering versus playing in like an actual tournament, and whether or not like your like deck selection in laddering or even the play itself really preps someone for a tournament with multiple deck selections and bans. Because from what I've heard and from what a lot of people on this show say is that you can lose a match based off your deck selection alone and like based off your ban or like based off something that if you would have just been a little more prepped for you would have won. So how do you guys, I guess, practice for that game outside the game when you guys come to maybe a big tournament like ESL? Like, how do you pick which decks you ban, which decks you uh, play with?
Yeah, like ESL was a bit different for me because I didn't get as much preparation time as I'd normally have for a tournament like that.
Of course,
I
because
had essentially 2 days preparation time.
yeah, yeah. For those who may not be aware, Max was kind of a last minute addition when Magic Amy couldn't make the tournament. And
Yeah,
we'll get into that later if there needs to. I don't know if we need to have a conversation about that. But yeah, Max did not have nearly the time that he would want to prepare.
yeah. So normally, what I'll do in preparation for a tournament is firstly I'll look at like the format. So if how many bands I get, how many decks I have to bring,
Mhm.
then like I play a lot of like other tournaments as well, like in preparation for big tournaments. So there's like Zotac
Uh huh.
Cups, like the NAESLs, like any tournament I can play, whether it's got like 8 people or 1,008 people, I'll be like playing it just to get like tournament
Yeah.
practice. Because as you say, it's like completely different from the ladder. So I guess it's mostly just practicing like best of fives, best of threes, like with bands, without bands,
Mhm.
rather than just playing a ton of ladder games
Mhm.
because they are like completely different.
Yeah, and I guess talking more into bands, are you more of the player that thinks you ban specific decks based on the player, or do you ban a deck based on like no, it's like this tournament the correct choice is always to ban, Warlock or Hunter or like whatever.
So something I tend to do, and I think a lot of players tend to do, is you'll have like a specific deck lineup of your 4 decks.
Mhm.
You'll know which deck you expect your opponents to ban, and like above and beyond that, you'll have maybe like one deck that all your 4 decks are weak to. So you might be like playing Freeze Mage and Zoo and Aggro Hunter, and be like, right, I'm just going to ban Warrior because it's
Yeah.
going to beat all my decks. And I think that's basically how most people like do bans. You just ban the class that is strongest against your decks, and then you don't prepare for that specific
Mhm.
class, and then you say I'm going to ban that every single time. And if they don't have that class, then I'll ban whatever it is, maybe depending on the player.
Uh-huh.
But it's more about what I bring than what I expect other people to
I
bring.
see.
Is how I look at my ban.
And of course, yeah, because that's the one thing you can control the decks that you bring. You
Yeah,
you don't know what they're going to bring. Speaking of which, you recently made top eight in the huge ESL tourney that just happened.
yeah.
Congrats. Um, I mean, tell us how that went.
Like the ESL tournament,
Yeah, yeah.
how that went. So I actually didn't do very well because I lost both my matches.
Mhm.
So my three decks. There are no bans in this format, and so I brought three decks. I brought like a mid-range hunter. I brought control warrior, and I brought oil rogue.
Mhm.
And at the last minute, I made like a metagame call that I was going to cut brawl from my warrior deck,
Uh-huh.
and I was going to put in a Kazan Mist deck, which was probably a huge mistake. I was expecting everyone to be like playing Hunter and Mech Mage, and I
Yeah.
was like, I want Kazan Mystic and Warrior just to like solidify that matchup,
Yeah.
so I can steal the Mirror Entity or steal the Freezing Trap. It turned out very few people were playing Mech Mage and very few people were playing
Wow.
mid-range Hunter, so it probably necessary. And but I think right now Oil Rogue's really, really strong. I was expecting a lot of people to play Oil Rogue,
Yeah.
so I was like, firstly I'm going to bring Oil Rogue
Yeah.
myself, and then I'm going to bring Warrior because that beats Oil Rogue,
Mhm.
and then I'm going to bring Hunter because right now it's still my most comfortable deck.
Yeah. And you mentioned the like popularity of Oil Rogue and I guess how that deck's kind of gone into favor. Can you explain why? Like, can you explain why that deck is seeing the success it is?
So firstly, it's really, really consistent.
Uh-huh.
It runs a lot of draw stuff. Some people are running shivs, some people are running fan up knives. But the idea is you've got mostly people have two sprints,
Mm.
which along with the preparation is a fantastic draw engine.
Yeah.
Like you can draw 4 cards of 4 mana, which is huge. Preparation gives you like a lot of tempo. People talk about how good Innovate is in Druid.
Uh-huh.
Preparation is like Innovate for spells, but you get an extra mana.
Yeah.
And you have a huge amount of burst damage. So the combination of the huge burst, the consistency, and the tempo advantage you get with cards like Preparation means the Oil Rogue is just like a really all-round powerful deck.
Hmm. And I mean, it's an it's an all around powerful deck, but obviously it didn't perform as well for you as you wanted it. Now, do you think that's just a personal play issue where just didn't have enough time to prep for kind of like the big stage, like live tournament, or were your other opponents just ready for it?
Well, actually, Oil Rogue was the deck I actually performed the best
Really?
with. Yeah, I think I went 2-1 with Oil Rogue or 1-2 with Oil Rogue,
Okay.
and I lost most of the games with my other decks. So I think it was more my other decks that let me down
Yeah.
than the Oil Rogue.
Yeah. So, I guess plans moving forward. I mean, what are the things that you see in your line of sights now that ESL has passed and it's time for you to find a new hurdle.
So next month I've got the European versus China Masters tournament. I managed to qualify for that a few weeks ago.
Nice, congrats.
So that's coming up in I think about 3 weeks. So that's basically my next big tournament. It's what I'm preparing for right now.
But how do you prep for Chinese Hearthstone? I mean, you know, the meta's quite different. Do you have a special like strategy, or are you just watching as many Chinese matches and as many Chinese players as you can right now?
Yeah, like basically I'm just trying to watch. I'm trying to watch Chinese
Uh
streams.
huh.
There's also 8 European players.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's I can't prep entirely for the Chinese metagame,
Mhm.
and a lot of the European players are actually like unknowns.
Okay.
Then and there's me and there's Tice. I know Tice pretty well. I think I understand his playstyle,
Yeah.
but and he streams a lot, which means there's a lot of information there about him. So, but it's really really difficult to prep for like 2 different meta
Of
games.
course.
I think is basically the biggest challenge right now.
Well, what are some of the examples of that like challenge that you can give?
So in China they use cards that we don't really use over here in the West. Like I was watching some streams and I saw things like Mad Bomber in Control Warrior.
Really?
And the idea is, I think, is that it can proc your an Acolyte of Pains, it pops Divine Shields. Like combining that with things like Whirlwind and things like Cruel Taskmaster, because it doesn't matter about the randomness. If it hits three things, it hits three things. And then Whirlwind can, and Taskmaster and like targeted damage can finish things off.
Yeah.
Because Warrior has like a lot of ways to finish things that have taken 1 or 2 damage
Yeah.
with like executes and things.
That's pretty interesting. That's a cool little piece of tech I haven't necessarily thought about myself.
Yeah. Whereas if you look at like Western Control Warrior decks, you don't see things like Mad Bomber. I mean, Zalay played Frothing Berserker in ESL, so I might sit down at a match in China, and I don't know whether my opponent's going to have Frothing Berserker
Yeah.
or Mad Bomber or both.
Yeah.
So
So I guess it's up to you to just, obviously you have to deal with the European meta, but just try to bring the most resilient decks you can think of, right?
yeah, I think my plan basically is just going to be bring the 3 or 4 strongest decks I can find, and not try and worry about planning, strategy, or anything around that.
Yeah.
But just play the individually strongest decks.
Yeah, and it's glad that you didn't say which decks. You don't want to give out any free information, which is actually something that I found quite interesting. That you said that Ties streams quite often, so that gives you a lot of information. Now you don't stream that often. I saw that you had a stream, but there was no like past broadcast or anything that I could watch. Is that like a purposeful thing because you are I'm aware that players will watch a stream and kind of get some info, or what?
Like the reason I don't stream is mostly because I'm really busy with university.
Uh-huh.
I would love to stream like a lot more often than I do,
Yeah.
and I keep being like, I'm going to stream next week, and then I get an email from my tutor being like, you haven't handed in your dissertation, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I guess I can't stream till Monday or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not really like a purposeful thing to like conceal information, but having said that, when I am streaming, I'm very aware of which decks I'm streaming,
I see.
and if I have a secret tech deck, I'm not going to play that on stream like the week before a tournament.
Of course, of course. And
I expect that'll be the same of the Chinese players and of Thais and all the other players who stream.
yeah, yeah. And so university, what are you studying? Like, what do you have you have to write dissertations while trying to prep for a Hearthstone tournament? That seems tough.
Yeah, so I'm studying physics.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty tough. I've got like there's a lot of stuff going on. I have essays. I have problem sheets, which is basically like here, do some maths.
Yeah.
And then I have labs, which is spend 6 hours doing a physics experiment, and then spend a week writing up the report on that.
That sounds.
So
I'm so glad I'm not in your shoes right now. Like I'm so glad I don't have to be doing physics problems. I remember in college, just to challenge myself, I was like, I'm gonna take a physics class. I know nothing about physics and I'm not very good with math, but why not? The worst worst decision ever made in my life. It was so difficult. But you like physics then? You're a math guy?
yeah, I really enjoy physics. I really enjoy maths. Like I like solving problems.
Which is why
fundamentally, like Hearthstone's like that.
Yeah.
Like it's about solving a problem, and I know I've really always enjoyed physics. Always like numbers. I've liked maths. It's always something that's come naturally to me. And
See,
if you're good at something, it's easier to work harder at.
Yeah. But okay, so I guess in terms of like years from now, in terms of, esports as a more long-term thing, what is your end game? Do you want to be doing esports for a long time? Do you think Hearthstone's going to have a super long lifespan?
Like I'd love to be playing esports forever.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, it's something I'm really passionate about. It's something I'm reasonably good at. and it's something I think I could probably make a living at if I really put my mind to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I wanted as a kid, right? Like, what kid didn't want to play video games
Yeah,
for a living,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
it's the dream.
It's the
Um,
dream.
so I'd love to play esports the rest of my life, and I think Hearthstone's going to be a game that will stick. If you compare, like, if you look at Magic's been around for what 20 odd
Oh
years,
yeah.
and Hearthstone, like I like it much better than Magic. I think because it's simpler, it's easier to understand, and it's
Mm-hmm.
run by Blizzard, who are an absolutely fantastic company at like pushing out games
Yeah,
and doing games right. You
yeah.
look at like some of the Blizzard content. You've got StarCraft, World of Warcraft. They're
Mm-hmm.
fantastic, fantastic games. So if any esports is still going to be here in 15 years, my money's on Hearthstone.
Yeah, and a lot of Magic's long lifespan is, like to be honest, because there wasn't much competition when you wanted a really solid, really solid card game. I mean, sure there was tons of them, but like Magic always had a strong foothold in like the competitive scene.
Yeah. So and Hearthstone has like the competitive scene, and it also has the fact that it's so accessible
Yeah.
because it's Magic has like a massive cost barrier to entry.
Mhm.
Like you wanna buy a Magic deck that's gonna be good, and you can buy a standard deck for maybe like £600 that you can play for a year.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas if I spent £600 on packs, I could buy like every golden card.
yeah.
Um,
y-
so
Yeah.
like I got ton of friends who just play Hearthstone. It's free to play,
Uh,
and they have a fantastic time. So I don't see any reason that going forward, Hearthstone's still not going to be here in 10, 15 years' time.
cool. Hey, well, hey, that's here. You know, uh, I think Hearthstone, it's so new in its lifespan. If you really think about it, you sometimes like forget that it's still like relatively new game. So it's always nice to hear, pros say, "Yeah, I'd love to stick with it for as long as I can." That being said, do you have any last words or shout outs? Well, last words sounds pretty grim. No, now do you have any last words? Do you have any shout outs or things you want to say before we sign off?
First, I want to say thank you to everyone who watched ESL, and thank you to everyone who came and everyone who supported me. I want to thank my team for being an awesome team, and anyone who considered themselves my fan. Thank you for that. And to all of my friends at Royal Holloway who play Hearthstone, you're all awesome and carry on playing Hearthstone, even though you suck. And that's basically it. Yeah.
All right, cool. Hey, well, man, thank you so much for being on the show. Max of Team A Method. You can find his Twitter and all other sort of like relevant links on the post when you see this at GosuGamers.net. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for having me.
cool. I'll talk to you later, perhaps.
Yep.
All right. See you, man. All right, so that was our first guest, Max. He's a cool guy. Had some little bit of lag issues. Hopefully that won't be too much of a problem to all you guys listening. We're gonna take a short break and start with our next guest soon. So yeah, just hold on tight. Be right back. Thank you. All right, welcome back. Thank you for waiting. Our next guest is Chakki, the one and only. You've heard of him if you've watched ESL lately. You've obviously seen him get second place. So let the call start, and let's. Hello.
Hey.
Hey, man. All right. Yeah, I was just doing your intro. So without further ado, do you have a video camera?
Yeah.
Alright, great.
Yeah.
Awesome! Look, it's Chakki, everybody. Hello, welcome to HearthCenter, my friend.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. We just got finished talking with Max, someone who did not nearly as good as you did during the during the recent ESL finals, and obviously we'll talk about that later. But yeah, why don't you just introduce yourself to our viewers, those who may have not heard of you by now.
Hi guys, I'm Chakki. My real name is Keaton Gill. I play for Team Dignitas. Recently got second in the ESL finals, and plan on playing Hearthstone for a while to come.
Nice, nice. So, Hearthstone. A lot of our talks, I guess, on the show usually starts with someone saying, "Yeah, I first played Magic: The Gathering, and then I saw Hearthstone and figured this was a really cool competitive thing." So, is that a similar story to you, or have you played games before this? Have you already been in the whole esports thing, or is this your first like foray?
My first like esports thing, I guess, was I kind of played like Challenger Scene League of Legends, but
Mm-hmm.
didn't really get anywhere with that. And basically just gave that up like when Hearthstone came out, and I was like, I had played Pokemon TCG before, and when Hearthstone came out, I was like, I'm gonna do this. We're gonna go to some tournaments, do
Uh-huh.
well. Like from the start, that was the plan, and it worked out obviously. So
Yeah. So, all I know about the Pokemon um card game is that Professor Oak wasn't that like one of like the best cards ever?
that card was so busted that when they printed a new copy of it that you can
Uh-huh.
only play once a turn, it's still overpowered and everyone
Really?
plays it. Yeah.
Wow. So it this is totally a tangent, but now I'm just curious because again, I didn't play the Pokemon card game. I'm just a huge rabid Pokemon fan outside like everyone else. So why is this card so busted?
It you just draw 7. And so it's a deck of 60, so it's about equivalent to Sprint in Hearthstone,
Uh-huh.
but it costs nothing to play. And now like the new ruling on it and stuff is you can only play one supporter card a turn,
Uh-huh.
and it's a supporter card, so you can draw 7 every turn, and that's pretty good in card games. So
Wow. What were they thinking?
yeah, it's definitely a different game. Like when I came to Hearthstone and like drawing one card in this game is like super good, I was like, huh, that's weird. Because in Pokemon you drew like maybe 10 cards a turn, and that was just
No way.
normal. Yeah,
Wow.
a lot
Shoot.
of differences.
I remember the first time that I played the Pokemon card game. I remember it was like the very first time it came out, and it were those starter decks, and one was like had the Charizard, and one had the Machamp, and I remember I had the one with like the Machamp, the fighting deck. I just kept getting destroyed by my friend who took the Charizard one, and obviously now looking back on it, he's the one that got like the Charizard. He's the one who won in that trade. We both split
Yeah.
our money. Oh well, man. So Hearthstone, you just naturally enjoyed the game the first time you played it then.
Yeah, it was actually like super fun at first. I remember the meta, like it was pretty crazy. The freeze mage deck was like overpowered as hell. I played that a lot.
Mhm.
There's like weird ass druid decks back then. Nobody had any idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
The first deck I used was Aggro Warrior because Artosis won with that at BlizzCon.
Yep.
So I just figured they knew what they were doing. I'm like, seems like a good enough deck. And then eventually we realized that deck was awful, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's games come a long way.
Yeah. What were some, I guess, of the core fundamentals that like everyone had to learn to kind of realize those decks weren't as good as we all thought. Like, like what were some of the turning points in terms of like, the pro mindset?
Well, like some stuff I honestly have no idea. Like the druid combo used to be like a joke. Like we just thought it was like stupid, and I guess like since they started removing a lot of the burst combos, it became better and better. Because
Mhm.
like 14 used to not be that much. It was like when you could double pyro people for 20, and you had the Rogue Leroy combo and all that, and the
Yeah.
Hunter OTK that did like 20 something, and so
Yeah.
14 wasn't that much, and now it's like the best burst combo in the game.
Yeah, geez, when you phrase it that way, you really realize how far we've come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know like how we exactly went about changing. I think we just like stuff has gotten nerfed, and we just
Mhm.
kind of learn like I mean, as far as like the aggro warrior deck and stuff winning, I don't know. I think the game was just so young then that it was just
Yeah,
like play some cards, hit them in the face.
yeah.
Maybe you'll get there.
Have some fun. Well, yeah, the whole selling point of the game was how casual it was. So the whole concept of even a tournament, I'm sure people were like, "Yeah, this is fun. I'll just bring the decks I like." You
Yeah.
know, I mean, shoot, back then a Murlocs was an actual thing. Like that was an actual deck. People
Yeah, that
competed
deck was great, man.
on the main stage with Murlocs. Man, what a time! What a time! So, speaking, I guess, of the changing changing meta and changing game. You mentioned earlier that this game used to be fun, or like back in the day when it was fun.
um,
Yeah,
it's definitely like less of a fun thing now and more. It's kind of like when you make anything into a job, it becomes a little more like tedious and things. I definitely still have fun, especially when I play with like friends and stuff over Skype, or
hmm
sometimes streaming's really fun. Sometimes it's not, but yeah, sometimes it can be a chore to just grind out all the matchups and practice the game, but
yeah,
it's definitely still a fun game at its core, and I think like that's definitely true, or else we wouldn't have as many players of the game as we do that just play casually.
hmm
And it's kind of like honestly a new experience for a lot of people. It's the first online card game done right
yeah,
that millions of people have accessed, and so Blizzard definitely did something really right, and a lot of
yeah,
people like it.
yeah. I'm glad you say it was the first online card game done right because I'm sure a lot of us listening have experienced Magic the Gathering Online, and as fun as that game is, Magic the Gathering Online
Yeah.
is a plague. What a horrible client, my God. Anyways, so yeah, speaking of fun, I've talked with a lot of your teammates before, and I've met some of them, and you guys like generally seem to have a lot of fun with the game. Like you generally seem to at times not take it so seriously, but then at other times really, like focus in and start competing. What's it like to be a part of Team Dignitas?
It's pretty great. I know that Blackout sometimes he takes the game rough sometimes like losses and
hmm
stuff like that. And it can be like the RNG aspect of things can be like annoying on some days. Like today, Saturday of ESL when I just lost to a swipe top deck, I was like, man, fuck this game. If I
Yeah.
0-2, I'm gonna be so pissed. My group is full of Kazan mystics. Like, ah. But I don't know. I am happy though. Kind of like some of my matches on Sunday, skill kind of shined through the top
Oh
decks,
yeah. Oh yeah.
and my opponents like sometimes made mistakes, and they actually got punished for it. And I was like, finally, justice.
Justice. Justice.
Because I think like Darquanix made the mistake in the Druid game, and I was gonna win,
hmm
and then I got top
And
decked.
and just for clarity, can you give an example of that specific mistake that you're talking about?
I think like the biggest one that people noticed was Weifu played Kazan Mystic when I had both secrets out. I had Ice Barrier and Ice Block, and he stole Ice Barrier,
Yeah.
which I then just never proc the whole game, and I had exact lethal at the very end.
Yeah.
So yeah, he definitely misplayed. I guess he thought it took the first secret you played.
I see.
So, but it's
What?
just a random one.
Yeah, which is interesting because like, how do you have the presence of mind to test that? Or like, I don't know, like I guess you have to be pretty thorough if you're playing with Kazan Mystic to, like understand the card.
Yeah, you basically just like have to never take Ice Barrier because it basically does nothing.
hmm
Whereas taking Ice Block completely changes the dynamic of the game. And
Oh yeah.
as a druid, if you take Ice Block, you're pretty much 90 something percent to win. As another class, it's not as big of a deal. I've beaten like the Mech Shaman when they take your Ice Block.
Really.
It's still fine,
Yeah,
but when druid takes it, you're fucked. So.
really. And is there any particular reason that Druid is so like resilient towards it?
Well, if a druid takes your ice block, that means they only have to kill you twice because you only have one ice block, and you
hmm
also have to kill them twice. And since they're a class that plays a lot of burst from hand with the combo, it's
Oh
very
yeah.
easy. You can't really like freeze them to like cheat out another life.
Yeah.
Whereas the classes that don't have like force savage you can just freeze their board, maybe freeze their face,
Yeah.
and just usually they won't have enough burn to kill you. Um, and basically, since they have the armor up, hero power, and they have Ancient Lord to heal and
Uh,
Loatheb, it's hard to kill them twice.
and
Like
we
you can barely kill them once.
and we somehow come back to that 14 damage combo.
Right.
How far it has come.
It's honestly it's like since they've nerfed all the other from hand combos, it's become like a problem when it used to just not even
Yeah,
exist.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's interesting how the nerfs of the game kind of change what's overpowered and
Yeah, yeah, we were just we were just talking to Max, and he was saying that he's quite the stubborn player. So even when a deck's nerfed, he still really tries to give it a shot and see if it's still like viable. What nerfs do you think were just way over the top? I mean, what nerfs shouldn't have happened, and now the deck's never going to see play, or if there is any?
well, I don't know if any of them were like over the top because in my the way I see nerfs is even if a card dies entirely, it's like maybe that was just their intent and they're
Mm,
fine. The metagame will always live on. I
yeah.
think right now is like the healthiest it's ever been as far as class diversity.
Uh-huh.
Priest is still like weak, but maybe it's like they've been trying to give them stuff every single set, and every set people think it's going to be strong and then it's not.
Mhm.
I think like there have been nerfs where the cards become completely unplayable. There's been like Blood Imp, Starving
Oh
Buzzard,
yeah, Blood Imp.
but
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Blood Imp used to
the
be one of the most broken cards
right the
ever.
old Blood Imp, it's like if you look at it, technically they over nerfed it because it's literally never been seen since,
Uh-huh.
but it was definitely a card where it's like the difference between drawing it and not drawing it, it's like you're playing an entirely different deck.
Yeah.
That nerf by itself killed the Murloc deck, which I was a little sad about, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, some stuff has to change, and it can be good for the game, it can be bad. Like the
Yeah.
Undertaker nerf kind of changed the landscape of the game. It's funny how like that nerf more than anything brought Mech Mage into prominence. Like
Uh-huh.
nobody really predicted that because I played a lot of Mech Mage before the Undertaker nerf, and it was a good deck, but one of the issues was like Cogmaster died to Undertaker every time,
Yeah.
and they didn't have great answers to Undertaker, and it turned out like that was the number one card keeping them down, and now it's
Yeah.
one of the best decks.
Which is interesting because that's those decks are the same type of decks that people wanted to see out of
Right,
favor with the nerf of Undertaker, but now you just have Cogmaster, which is a very similar card.
right. It's just that at least this one dies to 2/1s, but like the decks people are playing, like only aggro plays 2/1s anyway, and Mage has the
Mhm.
hero power, and
Yeah.
so it's almost like Undertaker is restricting aggro more than anything else.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
interesting.
well, I've you stream quite often, and from I was watching some of your stream, and you were once playing like a very aggressive warlock deck using elvish archers and all
Yeah,
sorts of other like one drops, and that type of deck is now possible, I guess, because of the nerf, right?
right. Because in themselves, Death Rattle cards aren't aggressive, but you
Mhm.
had to play them along with the Undertaker kit simply just to compete with other Undertakers.
Mhm.
Because it's like an arms race of who can build the bigger Undertaker half the time, and so now that that card's gone, I think ultimately it'll be healthy for the game,
Uh huh.
but it did take its toll on some of the Hunter and Zoo decks. Zoo's definitely, I guess it's like worse overall, but it's kind of better now that Hunter is a little
Uh
worse.
huh.
It's weird how like everything interacts with it.
Yeah, yeah. So has the game ever turned not fun? Are these the type of things that lean the game towards a headache, towards a job?
The number one time I did not have fun with this game was about, I think it was May last year,
Mm,
and it was when I think 32 out of or around 32 out of 32 people that made top 16 on Europe and North America were playing Miracle Rogue. Miracle Rogue was the only deck that was good.
uh,
Nobody had a way to beat it. It was like this is the end all be all of Hearthstone right now.
Yep.
And then some stuff changed. Naximus came out, and it was like, okay,
Finally.
we're not fucked anymore. You know, Miracle Rogue, it's still really good. It was like when
Yeah.
Loatheb came out, everybody thought that was it.
Yeah, but that was the
Oh no!
tool that Miracle
Oh
Rogue had.
no! Right, and it
Yes.
was. But before Loatheb and before Nax, when Miracle Rogue was the deck, I was not
Uh-huh.
happy with the game.
Yeah, yeah. And that type of deck is very much it's non-interactive,
Right.
it's
And I don't think there was much way to differentiate yourself in like the mirror match, which sucked because the best deck to ladder with was Miracle. The deck you're gonna run into the most was Miracle, and I was testing with a bunch of people. We were trying to see like we tested so many weird things. We had a list with like Chillwind Yetis in it.
uh-huh.
We were just trying to find something that could like make the mirror match better.
Yeah.
And I was like playing against people of all different skill levels, and I was just coming up with like the same win rates against everyone. And
Yeah.
and that was like the most infuriating thing was when I was playing against people that I was like, this guy's better than this guy. Why am I doing the exact same against both of them?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was probably, I think, in my opinion, the worst state the game's been in.
Well, thankfully that state is gone, but when that was going on, are you the type of player that, hey, I play to win. I'll play these cancer decks if I have to. Like, you know,
Uh,
do you
yeah,
ever feel bad about that or what?
I did not finish on ladder in May. I was like super upset with the game. I couldn't like find my groove or anything and do well on
Uh-huh.
ladder in the Miracle Waters. And then the next month I ended up getting like fifth with Aggro Rogue, which was just
Uh-huh.
like completely opposite deck. And that was like when I started to kind of like everything had changed. Everything was
Uh-huh.
changing every week. I mean, Aggro Rogue went from being like one of the best decks in the game to the next week, like Zombie Chow and Sludge Belcher came out,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like,
Change everything.
this deck's not too good anymore. Okay,
Yeah.
let's give up. Um, but
Yeah.
I'll play whatever is necessary. I won't be, happy about it when it's something like Miracle Rogue. I think my only concern really about playing like cancer decks or whatever
Uh-huh.
is when there's really no defining way that better players are winning with it more.
Mhm.
Because I still look at decks like Mech Mage, and there's not too much decision making, and it's not the most skill intensive deck.
Yeah.
But somehow Strife Crow and all these other top professional players, they still do better with it than
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
And there's still a small gap where you can see that these better players are doing better, even though
Mhm.
the deck is easier.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
as long as there's something like that, I'm pretty happy. But when it comes to the point where I can't find any way to differentiate the better
Yeah.
players using the deck, that's when it's not as good.
So speaking of better players, I'm doing better. Talk to you. Talk to us about your prep for ESL. Obviously it was a huge, huge tournament. I believe this was one of your first offline tournaments, correct?
Yeah, it's my third one. I've played at the regional finals for BlizzCon last year in New
Uh-huh.
York, and I went to Finland for Assembly last month, and this was my
Hmm.
third offline event.
Yeah, and this I guess would have been your third chance for that offline victory, which keeps so close to. I mean, second place is still great. Like obviously, like second place is like nothing to sneeze at. But tell us about your prep. Like what was your mindset going in?
So I'd played quite a few like online cups since Assembly. I basically came back 0-2, was not happy at all with my deck choices and stuff,
Mhm.
and I was happy that this wasn't a banned format. So
Mhm.
the thing is, when you do your prep, you know exactly what you're going to end up playing. You can't take anything away from your opponents. It's just like, this is it. We're
Yeah.
playing this. The format's very like, you have to play all your decks. So they all had to be pretty good. I went in kind of like, I talked to my friend Modern Leper,
Mhm.
and so we both have kind of like this for now, like cornerstone of Aggro Hunter and Freeze Mage work really well together.
Okay.
They kind of have similar bad matchups, similar good matchups, and the good matchups tend to be really good right now, which is like the Mech Mage just like all of the mid-range stuff they do really well against.
Hmm.
And then they have some bad matchups, which Freeze Mage isn't as great against Druid. They're both really awful against Warrior. And so basically, the third deck ended up being kind of like a make sure we don't just completely get fucked to Warrior, which was Druid.
Yeah.
A lot of people took Druid. I figured they would. I was surprised 8 people didn't have Druid at this tournament. But um, so I just kind of ended up with Druid as my cover deck, and I think the list for Druid could have been a lot better. I'm happy with where my Freeze Mage and Aggro Hunter were,
Uh-huh.
and I think I got some rough matchups, like literally every match. The three things I was worried about coming in were Warrior, which I faced twice,
Hmm.
Kazan Mystic, which I did not think would be there at all, and there were 3 in the tournament. I faced 2, and Demon Lock, which luckily I avoided until the finals.
Yes.
And Demon Lock was actually good against all of my decks, and so I just didn't. I went for it with Hunter. Figured if I was gonna 3-0 with anything,
It'd be Hunter. Yep.
going out in a blaze of glory with Hunter. So
So tell me about about Demon Lock. Was this more a calculated risk that you thought, you know, not many people would be playing Demon Lock, so I'm going to choose 3 decks that are kind of soft to it?
well, I knew that there are 3 people in this tournament that had like messed around with Demon Lock. Zalay played Combo Lock, and he had been kind of messing around with some Demon Lock brews. I thought he was probably the least likely to bring it.
Uh-huh.
Darquanix won with his Demon Lock, and like he's been a lover of Demon Lock for a while.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised he didn't have it. He just had Priest, Warrior, and Druid. Like
Yeah.
I think he regrets bringing Priest. I don't know. I was surprised he didn't have Demon Lock. And Silent Storm, I didn't really think would have it because it's kind of like the opposite for Silent Storm. He likes Priest a lot. I see him
Really?
playing Priest a lot on ladder.
Wow, so you've done a lot of homework when it comes to all the
Yeah,
players, huh?
I basically like I kind of have a network of people, and so anytime like any streamer or any one of my friends like met one of these people on ladder, I would get a report on what they were playing. And so I didn't hear much about Silent Storm playing Demon Lock.
I see.
And when I saw him playing it in the first match, he was in the completely opposite group of mine. I was like, yeah, he'll probably lose. I don't have
Yeah.
to worry about
I
it.
don't have
And
to worry
then,
about it.
of course, he makes it all the way to the
He's
finals.
climbing and you see him, you're like, uh-oh.
Right. Demon Lock's what I lose to. I think
Yeah.
the game I lost to Shaman was really unfortunate, but
Mhm.
yeah. So I ended up facing like exactly what I didn't want to face 5 out of 5 times, but it worked out. I mean, I went 3-2, got second.
Nice, nice. Yeah,
Comparing
yeah.
it to what I faced, if you told me before the tournament that it's like, all right, you're going in with Freeze Mage and Hunter, you're gonna
Eat 2
face 2
Kazan Mystics.
Warriors, 2 Kazan Mystics, and a Demon Lock. How do you think you'll do? I would have been like, I wouldn't bet
Yeah.
on myself.
Oh wow,
So
wow, cool. Yeah, so you've definitely, yeah, you've dodged a bullet, so to speak. But like obviously, those were some stacked matches, and I'm sure that the average player would have probably lost those. Like the average player would have probably made some sort of mistake. Is there any? What was your favorite play, or like the play that you're most proud of in that tournament?
um, hmm. I think I played the Freeze Mage versus Kazan Mystic Druid matchup really well.
Mm.
And I ended up beating Weifu in that. Other than that, I mean, I think the Druid mirror against Darquanix, where I was basically like, he innervated Teacher into Ooze into Shade. He just curved out perfectly, and I had nothing. And then it basically came down to me winning the game 92% of the time or whatever. I think I played that really well.
Mhm.
Took risks in that a lot. Like, I got Millhouse Mana Storm off my Shredder. So there was luck involved, but basically, I think I put myself in a position where luck mattered.
Yes.
And I got to the point where I won unless he had exactly double swipe, and he
And he had
did.
exactly double swipe.
Um, so yeah, other than that, I can't really remember any matches. I think the best series was probably against Zalay,
Uh-huh.
and there was the Warrior versus Hunter match where I was one off lethal, even though I drew both explosive traps.
Jeez.
I really in those matches I wasn't playing around Sludge Belcher at all. Like I Ironbeak Owled his Frothing Berserker,
Mhm.
and I was just like relying on him not having Sledge Belcher, and he didn't. So
There's a calculated risk
Yeah,
again. Yeah.
right.
You know, I think all of the phrases I'm using is very much in line with someone who understands that luck is a big part of the game. But like you said, you have to put yourself in positions where luck matters. And I know that something that we get a lot from people who like listen into the show is they're always asking questions about how do I combat the RNG? How do I make myself like immune? And first of all, you can never make yourself immune. But
Right.
what are some overall suggestions to some of our like listeners that are wanting to try to make themselves feel less like unlucky every single match?
I think like the hardest part of the game maybe is being able to look at a situation where you have two choices and one is a safe play and the other one's like I can go for an RNG effect, whether it's Wrath to draw a card and hope for something,
Hmm.
or whatever, or like pop a Shredder and hope X, Y, or Z comes out. Sometimes it's like I hope a 2 attack minion or less pops out. Sometimes it's I hope I get Doomsayer off of this. Weird stuff like that. Um, you basically have to be able to, in your head, think it through and say, if I make this safe play, am I going to win realistically? And there was a turn in the Druid Mirror against Arquonix
Yeah.
where I could have Druided the Clawed and Taunt, and that would have been fine. He would have, had traded in 6 damage. I would have stabilized a bit more. Or I could Wrath for 1 on his Violet Teacher and hope to draw like a Shade of Naxxramas.
Hmm.
And I did that, and I drew Shade of Naxxramas, and then later on I used that Druid of the Claw and Taunt to like save my life.
Yeah.
So that was a moment where it's like I went for the seemingly like lucky play, but basically by saving the Druid of the Claw taunt for later when I was truly in danger, it put me in a position to win the game, 90 something percent of the time.
Yeah.
And
So it's
sometimes
almost
it's just like hard to hard to go for the risky play when you have a safe play.
so it's like trying to find the opportunities where you can take the risk, like where you
Right.
can find that the reward is far greater than the risk.
Right, and sometimes the safe play is just kind of like people talk a lot about win more plays,
Uh-huh.
but sometimes the safe play is like a lose less play,
Yeah.
where you can feel good about yourself, like oh that game was so close, but it's like a loss is a loss,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if you didn't take the appropriate risks, then that's a misplay, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. That's very interesting. I don't think we've had a guest that phrases it that way, but it makes a lot of sense. Um, so now that ESO's over, are you the type of player to just, all right, I'm never gonna look back. ESO's over. Now it's time to find the new like pinnacle, the new mountain. Like, what do you have in the future?
well the when I lost in New York in October, I went
Hmm.
1-2. I came back and I just grinded ladder all month and got number one legend.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm definitely like motivated by losing, and I don't think there's like any live events coming up that I know of that I'm going to.
Uh-huh.
So it might be a little bit before another live event, but I'm definitely gonna in these next like 4 or 5 days. I really want to get a high ladder finish this month. I got
Uh-huh.
50 points from ESL, so I think I'm number 2, right behind Silent Storm
Uh-huh.
in North American points. So I really want to get points. I'll be streaming more now that I don't have to like hide my decks or
Yeah,
anything,
yeah.
and just practicing. The one thing I want to do more before my next event is practice matchups and make sure that going into the event, I'm not using a deck because I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah.
I want to be using the most powerful decks. I want to have the best lineup, no inhibitions,
Mm.
based on my experience with it or whatever. And I want to know like all of my matchups down pat. Just have everything, all the pre-work done before the tournament. Not have to worry about demon lock. Between
Yeah.
night 1 and 2. Be thinking like I haven't tested against that enough.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah. Well, hey man, that's you got a stacked schedule.
Yep.
I'm ahead of you. Now, the last thing I have to ask, because I've had so many people saying I have to ask this. The whole situation with Magic Amy, like I feel as if we could talk about this for a long time, but that's not my goal. My goal is to not talk about this for this huge time, but my goal is to get inside your head. What were you thinking? Did you know that it would blow up into this huge thing? How long did you suspect? Like, just what? Like, what's happening here?
Um, this like kind of started out in December when she
Mhm.
was first on like ESL, and then a Skype chat. Like it almost came up as like a joke that
Yeah.
like maybe somebody was playing for her, and that wasn't like the main concern really.
Yeah.
And I know that like way back in like April, I think, like right after the gold portraits thing came out, she was very like suspicious of botting and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Um, and basically, there's kind of some proof that somebody posted on Reddit, if people want to look at that, of she made a forum post on a botting forum.
Uh-huh.
And she has all 9 gold portraits and stuff, so suspicious on that end. But basically, like, I'd heard all this stuff from people over months and months. Like, kind of knew a little bit about Celerity, didn't know much about Jab's thing
Mhm.
until he posted that, but, like, you just hear all these things, but
Yeah.
nobody says anything. And then Specialist kind of, like, came out with his thing.
Uh-huh.
And I just decided, it's like, I'll just post this. We'll see. We'll
Yeah.
let people figure out what they want to figure out.
And
I
my
personally think, like, all of the evidence of all the different stuff, it's definitely enough to convince like me that there's shady shit going on
Mhm.
in different areas, whether it's botting, conning people out of money,
Yeah.
um, whether somebody is playing for her or not. I don't really know that or anything. I know that her, supposedly ex-boyfriend that she has no connection to except for the fact that she magically has accounts that are his accounts and
Mhm.
stuff like that. That's weird to me too, but I can see why that's circumstantial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I I think the cherry on top is the fact that she won't stream, she won't go to an event, she won't clear her name, she's just bowing out.
Mhm.
And uh, one interesting thing was Reynad said apparently money was an issue,
Mhm.
that she couldn't pay $1,500 to go to a live event. ESL paid for our flight, our hotel, taxis. They paid for all of my dinners. I basically didn't spend a dime going to ESL.
Wow.
So I don't think money's really an issue for that event.
Wow.
And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I feel as if this whole drama bomb kind of compared with in terms of like news and like editorial, it's been a very slow like last couple weeks. So then this whole thing was just kind of the perfect storm. But your whole intent, I guess, was just you just want to clear up the air, right? You just wanted to clear up the
right,
air and
I just, the one thing I didn't want to happen is, and I mean, like, people like Reynad seems upset about it, but it's like he was making financial gain off of this. Of
yeah,
course, he's gonna be a little upset, but
yeah,
I think the worst thing that we could do is just like let somebody continue conning, like, basically the community at large when you know something about it, and a lot of people knew stuff. It's like as soon as Specialist posted, and then I posted my the Imgur
yeah.
evidence, a lot of people came forward
Totally
with like,
confirmed.
"Oh, here's my story. Oh yeah, she did
Yeah,
shady shit to me." It's like basically a lot of people knew all this stuff, and nobody said anything, which is kind of sad.
yeah.
But
It's always a tough situation. Well, you know, who knows? Who knows whatever really happened? No one can say for sure, but we can say that the the reality is that the Hearthstone community
uh,
was rocked. You know?
people can make their own conclusions, and I think they will. And that's all that needs to happen.
Yeah, yeah. So ending, I heard that from a personal source that you hate Snapple, and it's one of the worst drinks you've ever had. Same with the artist Lana Del Rey. That these are two things that you actively dislike. Now, is this true or false? Can you confirm or deny this?
That's I'm sad because I don't have like a Snapple bottle laying around because I've been gone all week, so I don't have any. Normally I'd just like pick up a Snapple, be like, "What are you talking about?" But
Wait, so these are false. These are
the-
false
these are
allegations.
indeed false.
Fall tailgating.
Snaffle's the best drink, man. Everybody should drink it.
Okay, Snapple. And the Lana Del Rey, is that?
Yeah, Lana Del Rey is great, man. Best music.
Okay, good. So now that we cleared up the Magic Gaming thing, we also cleared up this. You
Yeah.
indeed love Snapple.
We gotta get more drama going now.
Yeah, something, you know. Does Chakki really even drink Snapple? You never really see him drink it.
Has Chakki been drinking colored water this whole time?
Yeah. Does anyone have proof it's Snapple? I don't. Anyways, closing up. Any shout outs or any things you want to say to some of your fans, some of your viewers out here now before we close out?
Yeah, shout out to all my fans. You guys are great. Thanks for watching the stream, following me in tournaments. It's honestly really great coming back to like my hotel room, kind of bummed about second place, and then reading a bunch of messages, almost all good messages, just like, hey, good job, you know, I was cheering for you. That stuff's great. Shout out to my team and my teammates and our sponsors, Alienware, Scan,
Nice.
Western Digital, and Corsair. I know I don't want Odie getting on me about no sponsored shout-outs.
Sponsors, yeah, they make it possible.
Yeah, so, and shout-outs to ESL for a great event, and, you know, putting on for all of us, paid for everything, basically. It was very nice.
Nice. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was fun. I'm sure maybe we'll have you again. Who knows? Maybe next time you're a tick first. But really, dude, second is nothing to be sad about. Congratulations. It was very hard.
Thanks.
All right. Hey, well, thanks again. See you later.
See ya.
All right. Chakki, that's a funny guy. And who knows about all that Magic Gaming stuff, right? It's a tragedy either way you look at it. With that said, thank you so much for listening to this episode of HearthCenter. My name is Nick Durazio. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, check out GosuGamers.net for all of your Hearthstone news. You can find this post and all sorts of info on our guest. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. This is Nick signing out. Thanks.